A man who completely changed after surviving an iron rod shooting through his head. An Australian UFO case investigated by the military where all evidence was completely destroyed, and a vanishing Navy vessel. These are real-life X-Files cases so strange the government can't explain. In 1848, Phineas Gage, a railroad supervisor, became part of one of the most bizarre medical cases ever recorded. So while working with explosives, Gage was handling a tamping iron when it accidentally exploded, shooting the 3-foot-long rod right through his skull. It entered just below his left cheekbone, passed behind his eye, and exited through the top of his head. Miraculously though, Gage didn't die. He was conscious, and he was even able to walk after the accident. In fact, he even filled out his time card on the way back to his hotel, saying he was checking up for work. It was just nuts. He was even talking and making jokes. There were consequences down the line though. People around him noticed a very obvious change in his personality. Before the accident, he was known to be hardworking, responsible, even-tempered, but afterward, he became more impulsive, irritable, more unhinged. He'd almost become a completely different person. Now, I started off the list with this story because it inspired an episode of The X-Files. Season 2, episode 15, entitled Dwayne Barry, is based on this real-life case. In the episode, Dwayne Barry, a psychiatric patient, goes on a rampage, claiming that he's been abducted by aliens. Well, it turns out Barry also suffered a traumatic brain injury that he miraculously lived through, this time from a bullet wound, resulting in this dramatic change to his personality. Just like Gage, Barry becomes erratic and unhinged after his injury. Of course, the X-Files episode adds more sci-fi to it, revealing that Barry has an alien implant in his head, which causes electronics to malfunction, and I don't think that was the case with Gage. I think having an iron rod shoot through your head just kinda has an effect on your psyche. Now, to be fair though, I am simplifying things a bit. It's still not fully understood why brain injuries like this can change people's entire personalities. On April 6, 1966, something strange happened in Melbourne, Australia, an incident that became known as the Westall UFO sighting. There were over 200 witnesses, including students and teachers from Westall High School. They reported seeing this strange flying object that was round with a domed top and either white, gray, or silver. The UFO was seen moving across the sky before dipping down behind a row of trees and landing in a grassy field known as the Grange, just south of the school. Some of the witnesses even claimed the bigger UFO was being followed by a bunch of smaller, unknown aircraft. Some students went to the Grange to check it out and found what seemed to be a circular area in the grass, which they reported to be either burnt, pressed down, or even, quote, boiled. Whatever the flying object was, it had left an imprint behind, but when the military showed up to investigate, they reportedly found nothing, and the field was even set on fire to stop people from coming back. And that part is very strange. Sounds like an X-Files episode to me. The Philadelphia experiment is a famous story where the US Navy supposedly tried to make a ship invisible. According to the tale, they succeeded with the USS Eldridge, making it vanish for a few minutes, but things went terribly wrong. Some of the crew members went insane, others became intangible, and some even ended up fused with the ship when it reappeared. There were also reports suggesting the ship didn't just disappear, but actually traveled through time. Well, again, this strange story was part of the inspiration for the 1995 X-Files episode Død Kalm. In the episode, Mulder and Scully investigate a mysterious incident involving the USS Ardent, a US destroyer escort that seemingly vanished and reappeared in the Norwegian Sea. The surviving crew, who had abandoned ship after a strange event, are found 18 hours later, having aged rapidly. Mulder even references the Philadelphia experiment in the episode, saying the 1940s government experiment aimed at making ships invisible may have caused time distortions. In August of 1942, the L-8, a Navy airship, took off from San Francisco on a routine mission, but something weird happened. Hours later, the blimp was spotted drifting, but there was no sign of its crew. The airship touched down briefly on a beach where two fishermen tried to grab it, but when they looked inside, it was empty. No crew, nothing. The airship continued floating, crashing later in Dalia City, still with no crew on board. Of course, it seemed like there had been an accident, but there had never been a distress signal sent out. Had the crew somehow fallen out? Had they been captured? Or had something more bizarre happened? The official Navy investigation didn't shed any light on it. Both crew members were declared dead, but their bodies were never found. People still wonder today what happened to the two, leaving only the L8 floating on its own, earning it the nickname the Ghost Blimp. Again, great title for an X-Files episode. The Beast of Bray Road is said to be a wolf-like creature that's been haunting the rural roads of Elkhorn, Wisconsin for decades. It was first reported in 1936, but it became a lot more popular in the 80s and 90s after reports of sightings started getting talked about more often. Local journalist Linda Godfrey started covering these stories. At first she was pretty skeptical, but was eventually convinced that something strange was going on. There were so many reports that she decided to make a book out of them called The Beast of Bray Road, tailing Wisconsin's werewolf. Witnesses say the creature looks like this giant fur-covered wolf, standing about 6 to 7 feet tall with glowing red or orange eyes, pretty standard for a werewolf-type creature. Some claim it moves like a wolf on all fours, others have seen it walk on 2 legs like a human. Some witnesses have even claimed the monster scratched their vehicles or chased them. And along with the physical sightings of the creature itself, there are also reports of strange animal mutilations in the area, with livestock and deer found partially eaten or missing organs. One witness described seeing both. He saw the creature feeding on a roadkill deer before it ran off into the woods when it spotted the person. Is it just a misidentified animal, or could there really be a monstrous beast stalking the roads of Elkhorn? Varig Flight 967 was a commercial flight that vanished on January 30th of 1979 while flying from Tokyo to Rio de Janeiro. The flight was carrying valuable cargo, including over $1 million worth of paintings. It was supposed to stop in Los Angeles for more cargo and passengers, but it never made it. About 8 hours into the flight, the crew lost contact with air traffic control. They didn't send any distress signals or emergency calls. Everything had just gone quiet, and no one knows why. There were massive search efforts by both Brazilian and American authorities, but no wreckage was ever found. The plane, its crew, and the valuable cargo just disappeared into the Pacific Ocean. But what I like to think with this one is that those pilots, they got away with some very valuable paintings. They're living it up somewhere, new identities. I don't know. There are some pretty ridiculous cryptid reports out there, and some pretty convincing ones. The case of Octoman has both the charm of a ridiculous story while managing to be one of the most corroborated cryptid sightings in history at the same time. So in January of 1959, a strange creature, later dubbed the Octoman, made its debut appearance in Ohio. The first sightings came from a man near the Little Miami River, who claimed that a, quote, indescribable monster emerged from the water. Not long after, a truck driver on a nearby road reported seeing this same bizarre creature, and then more and more of these weird calls started pouring into local police. And a lot of these witnesses were described by authorities as seeming genuinely shaken. As the reports grew, all the streetlights along a stretch of road went dark at the same time. Coincidence? Maybe, or maybe Octoman had caused a small power outage. The creature itself was described as having grayish skin, almost like an octopus. One witness described it as a, quote, slimy, shuffling mass, which just sounds awful. After that night, though, that was kinda it. And that is way stranger to me than something like Bigfoot, which is just reported all the time. This was one night where a whole bunch of people saw something they didn't understand. Really makes it more believable that it could have been some crash-landed alien or some sort of escaped lab creature which they caught or something. Next up, we have the Kalahari Crash, often called South Africa's version of Roswell. On May 7th, 1989, a UFO was spotted over the Indian Ocean by naval personnel. Fighter jets were quickly sent in to intercept it, and after briefly engaging with it, the object crashed into the Kalahari Desert, leaving behind a skid mark. Then a US recovery team moved in to clean up the mess, snatching up parts of the craft and even the bodies of apparently 2 alleged aliens. While some claim this was all just a hoax, there are said to be documents that hint at a major cover-up. The objects and bodies were supposedly taken to Patterson Air Force Base for studying, but details about what happened afterward are hazy at best. Sounds like a case for Mulder and Scully. NASA astronaut Leland Melvin had a bizarre experience while on a space mission. He and another astronaut spotted something floating outside the shuttle that looked, quote, organic and alien-like. NASA quickly dismissed this, claiming it was probably just some ice from a Freon hose, part of a system used to manage the cooling and temperature control in a spacecraft, but Melvin wasn't so sure. He also described the object as translucent, curved, and that it looked almost alive. Despite NASA's explanation, Melvin's story, which he later posted about on Twitter, has left a lot of people questioning what really happened. Was it really just ice, or was there something else out there? The Flatwoods Monster is one of West Virginia's most famous cryptids. On September 12, 1952, a group of kids and an adult in Flatwoods saw a strange glowing object streaking across the sky. They followed it and found a saucer-shaped craft that had apparently crashed into a nearby hill. As they approached the site, they saw this tall, glowing creature standing near the craft. And this creature has to be one of, if not the strangest descriptions of a creature I've ever heard of. Apparently, it had a spade-shaped head, like the spade you'd see on a deck of cards. The witnesses were terrified, and one of them reported feeling a burning sensation in their throat, which some believe was some kind of toxic gas the creature may have emitted. The group then ran off, and the creature was never seen again. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.